So the Mustang is an important airplane in the history of World War II because it was the first airplane that had the efficiency to go all the way to Berlin with the bombers. And one of the main reasons why it could do that was because it's a water-cooled engine, which allowed to have a very narrow fuselage and a small frontal area. And so without air cooling, we had to have water cooling. And so the water, there's no place for a radiator up in the front of the airplane. So the radiator's back here in the aft fuselage. And the air comes in the inlet duct, and the oil cooler is down on the bottom side of this, and the radiator's on the top, and the air flows through the oil cooler and the radiator. And there are exit doors both on the oil cooler and on the radiator, and both of those doors can be adjusted. And they're automatically controlled by what we call a Robert Shaw actuator, thermostatically controlled. And so we bring this cold air in the front, and we run it through the radiator, and in the process of heating that air, it expands. And it's pressurized, and by nozzling off the exit, we can accelerate that air, recover the heat of engine cooling as thrust. And the combination of the reduced frontal area from water cooling and the thrust recovery from the throttling of the exit doors is called the Meredith effect, and was accredited with as much as 15 horsepower of thrust. But that was the key difference that made the water-cooled Merlin more efficient than its air-cooled P-47s and things like that.
I came up against the Focke-Wulf 190. That's a tough plane because it's, it was one of the premier fighter aircraft. The Germans had lost so many pilots. They didn't have the background training that some of our pilots had.
Following her recent misfortune, the CAF Mustang returned to Air Corps Aviation in Bemidji, Minnesota, to undergo her second restoration in 12 years.
It arrived here, and of course it had been in a landing incident, and so the bottom of the airplane was pretty well damaged, and really the front end of the airplane around the engine and cowling was pretty well beat up. We had to make a lot of the parts on the cowling and cowl formers and some pretty complicated parts. Of course, those standard accidents like that, they never seem to damage the simple parts. It's always the complex parts that get damaged. We have a relatively young average age around here. It's probably, it could be under 40 years old actually, which in our industry is pretty young. And so we have a large appreciation for the vintage and old techniques, and we really appreciate that, and we have a large interest in that. But we also have an appreciation and interest in modern technology, and because of our age, we're able to embrace that and employ modern technology to either replicate or accelerate the process that was used during World War II, because preserving that process and that finished part and what it looked like is really important to us, and we know it's important to our customers.
Well, this is the radiator scoop on the Mustang, and it's an incredibly complicated part. It's got all kinds of compound curves in it. This up here, you can just see, the amount of aluminum stretching that has to occur to build that part's phenomenal.
One of the things we do is we'll take and splash a fiberglass template off of an original part, and then when we have a new piece of metal, we'll put that on the new piece of metal, and that tells us exactly where to trim it out, because that's one of the problems with fitting complicated sheet metal parts is knowing where to trim it out, because if you trim it out off center a little bit, you'll end up with a wrinkle or
another piece of scrap.
Yeah, another piece of scrap. So we're making actually all the parts for a header tank, and we're able to repair these header tanks and essentially build them from scratch. The header tanks are a pretty important part on the Mustang, and they have a lot going on, as you can see.
So these are the swirl tubes, right? And their purpose is to...
So the hot coolant is coming out of the head, and you can see just by the shape of this,
yeah,
the coolant is going to spin in here,
right,
naturally, and then it's going to go this way. As it's spinning, actually the air, you can see it on this side, is going to float to the top, of course, and be able to come down this tube, and then the air then comes out of this tube and floats to the top, and that's how the air is extracted. So the coolant level is here.
Yeah, there's
and all
the filler right here.
Yep, all the coolant that's in here would have the air removed from it.
Yep.
So by the Venturi effect down here, it's going to suck that
Right.
non-aerated coolant through the engine. In fact, it's interesting because the very first, if you look at the drawings, the very first header tanks that they put on a Merlin-powered Mustang were wide open in here. They didn't have this tube assembly, much like an Allison-powered Mustang or any other Allison-powered engine for that matter. And so they realized they were having an issue with air in the coolant system, and so they came up with this scroll type system. This is an original North American tailwheel assembly. They're made out of magnesium, so steel parts pressed into magnesium obviously
dissimilar metal corrosion.
Metal corrosion.
Yeah. You built this part
Yeah.
out of magnesium?
No, we considered it, but we made it out of billet. Yeah.
And how many other parts are left up in there? There's a big casting up there that attaches the airframe, right?
Yeah, there's another casting similar on top.
Is that magnesium as well?
It is magnesium as well. For some reason, it doesn't have as much problems as this one does, probably because this one is more in the elements, I would say.
As a testament to its versatility and durability, Mustang parts can still be sourced today. P-51s served for decades in different theatres across the globe, even taking on the formidable Messerschmitt 262 jet fighter, and examples survived to play a role in the Korean War. At Air Corps, the team are preparing to fit the wings. They gradually hoist the airframe up to allow the one-piece wing assembly to pass underneath. This is the most nerve-wracking part of the process. Months of work and millions of dollars of airframe hangs from the specially designed ceiling gantry on chains, straps and pulleys. Wheeled into place on small dollies, the wing and undercarriage unit is now ready for the fuselage to slot in. It's a delicate job mating the two sections of the aircraft as the tolerances are so fine. Eric and the team have done this before, so know the best methods to get the whole assembly aligned to achieve a complete airframe. Nonetheless, it's a different and delicate task bringing the two together. Now with the crucial elements of the restoration complete, and a matter of days before her first flight, the smaller components, cables and instruments can be fitted, ahead of final inspection and the day itself.
If you think about how much work's been done to this airplane and how bad it was hurt, it hasn't been nearly as long as one might think. It's really come together really, really well and really quickly. What really caused the wheels to come off the wagon was the airplane veered off the runway as it was slowing down, and as the prop got into the dirt, rather than sliding on the pavement, the coefficient of friction between aluminum and concrete is considerably lower than the coefficient of friction between aluminum and dirt. So as the propeller got into the dirt, it dug, and that broke the front of the gear reduction off the front of the engine. And then the propeller went underneath the airplane, and one of the prop blades went through a gear well. And so that put a bunch of damage into the bottom of the wing, which was much greater damage than you would normally expect to see on a traditional gear up.
We had the manpower and the processes to get it done quick.
Well, and the parts are here. You guys have access, either have them in stock or have access to the parts. And, you got Eric on the phones and on the internet rounding stuff up before you need it, and that makes a huge difference. This is the second time I've flown this airplane on the first flight out of a restoration, and this one is not nearly as big of a project as last time, and not nearly as emotional. The last time I flew it, the guy that flew it before me was Don, and he perished in it, and so that was a very emotional day, and his son Ben was there to watch it fly. This is a lot more workmanlike here. This is, the airplane's obviously had a lot of work to it, but I have a lot of confidence in the folks that have worked on it. I'm not too concerned about it. The danger in flying old airplanes is you get all hyped up. You say, well, it's a first flight, we really got to be careful. The reality is you need to be prepared for a problem every time you get in the airplane. And if you take that approach to it, then this is just another flight, and that's the way we're going to approach it. and we're going to look forward to a normal flight with a normal landing. Was as it should be. It was just really a pretty nominal flight. I mean, we just got some temperatures to tweak, and there's no way to do that without flying them. They're going to do some fit and finish work on it, but all in all, the airplane ran very well. You know, the engine, I think, is smoother than it was before. It's got different gears up front, so maybe these gears fit better in the old ones. I don't know, but it just ran flawlessly, so I'm really happy and ready to get it back out on the road for another season, telling the story of the Tuskegee Airmen and inspiring young people.
We made the deadline.
Congratulations, man.
I don't know whether you guys realize it or not, but there ain't another shop in the country that could have turned this airplane in this time. And you know, and not only that, we knew what your capabilities were. And last February, when we were hauling it home, Eric and Mark and Dave and I all took a piece of paper and we wrote down a date, and we all wrote down money, and we compared our money, and the dates were all within a month of each other, and the money was within 150,000. And we made our date. The dates went from Thanksgiving to New Year's, and the money was at the low end of everybody's number, and that's a tribute to, you know, the work you guys do here. It's incredible, and you're you know, changing this business in a big way. And on behalf of the CAF and the Red Tail Squadron, I just want to say thank you for getting us back on the road next spring, because otherwise we'd have missed another summer. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's a testament to the hard work of our people, and everybody just did a great job. And like Doug said, you know, and I agree. I don't know if anybody else could have done what we did, and that's awesome. It feels good. I can tell everybody feels good too. So.
Following the successful test flight, a few days later the CAF P-51C arrives at Ken Kaminsky's Flying Colours paint shop in Benton Harbor, Michigan, where she will reacquire her iconic Red Tail Tuskegee colour scheme. No time is wasted as the Flying Colours team go about their task of meticulously preparing the aircraft for a transformation.
So really the whole bottom of the airplane, the doghouse, the lower cowl, parts on the side of the wingtip, those were all ground down to bare metal, and they were completely refabricated out of brand new metal. We didn't have to strip those parts. Unfortunately, we didn't want to paint half the airplane, we wanted to paint the whole airplane. So we stripped it all down to bare metal and start over from scratch from the paint perspective. The airplane is thoroughly disassembled. Every piece that can come off the airplane, not stuff that's riveted together, but pieces that come off for inspection, and further than that, all the gear doors, we disassemble all of the pieces around the radiator housing, around the butterflies. All those pieces are removed, seals, composite parts, plastic parts, anything that's affected by the stripper is protected, and then a hydrogen peroxide based environmentally friendly paint stripper goes on and pretty much takes the majority of the paint off. Then all of those pieces, all of that substrate has to go through a surface prep process where we get the remaining portion of the paint off and put the right amount of sanding scratch into the metal. You know, too fine of a scratch paint doesn't like to stick to that. Too coarse of a scratch, it ruins the finish quality. So there's the right blend. 180 to 220 grit sanding scratch is really the surface that we want to get all of the aluminum to. Right here where that old Zeus fastener was, we want to make sure that that's smooth and leveled in.
Yep, still got
Yeah,
going around.
little spot there around the rest of them. So all of these panels were painted first with the green primer, then applied the surfacing primer. Then we put, and then again, we're gonna sand that surfacing primer and bring that to a super smooth surface. We actually put a dry powder, a guide coat on here that allows us to see, we can start to see that orange peel start to come out. And I'm actually, with those few strokes, you can start to see where now you got the hills and the valleys, removing, keep on sanding to the point where we know we have a nice, flat, trued surface. The Warbird has all of these rivets and spot welds and this texture that's in here. It's desirable to have that showing through the finish at the end of the process. So we have to be careful not to put too much surfacing primer on here to fill all these. In the end, we want to see this rivet row of flush rivets, and this rivet row of protruding head rivets is desirable to see all of that. This is a gram scale. It goes down to 1/100th of a gram, which is pretty sensitive. So this is how much by weight we're going to put in of these different components to make the red. So we're shooting for 315.9 grams. Right on the money. And that's how we make P-51 red paint.
The all-important red paint is applied and the lengthy process of lacquering and polishing the aircraft can begin. Mustangs flew in a range of different colour schemes, and there were sound, practical reasons for this.
Bottisham Airfield Museum. This was a P-51 base. The 361st Fighter Group, Yellow Jackets, because of the yellow noses on their aircraft. Colours were important to fighter pilots. Blue noses, red tails, because in combat, in the swirling turmoil in the heavens, you might need a quick glimpse of something that said, okay, it's a red tail, it's one of mine. It may not be if you don't see that giveaway red tail. So it was not just for show. It wasn't flamboyance, pure and simple. It was identification.
Like a debutante at her first ball, the Tuskegee Mustang is now ready to have her final layer of makeup applied. The finishing touches bringing not just authentic details to life, but also acknowledging the aircraft's modern owners, the CAF. Doug has made the 500-mile trip from Iowa to oversee the final moments before she's ready to roll into the daylight and take to the skies.
Any of our projects, particularly something like this, our favorite day in the shop is delivery day. When the customer walks in and he looks at the airplane, he says, I can't even believe that that's my airplane. It's the reward. It's why we do this job.
Now in her full colours, the Mustang is ready once again to fulfil her role in honouring the Tuskegee Airmen. Public appearances and many more admirers now await her. Only months after her previous misfortune, she is ready to thrill the crowds again, reunited with the travelling exhibit and proudly retelling the Tuskegee story.
Yeah, it's just really exciting to have the airplane back in the sky and out on the air show circuit where, the airplane's doing what we intended for it to do from the very beginning, serving as the hook, the excitement the sizzle in the steak that sells the story of the Tuskegee Airmen and causes young people to realize how they can rise above the adversity they find in their lives, supporting our Rise Above exhibit.
The modern-day Red Tail fighter wing, based in Alabama, pays tribute to their squadron's heritage and, with their distinctive red tail fin, proudly linked to their past.
We're a Red Tail legacy unit. People know the Tuskegee Airmen and their storied history. And so really everything we do is about linking us, the present and future, to our past, and just continuing that legacy of the Red Tails.
We want to inspire the next generation of youth to do whatever it is that they want to do, that they can achieve their goal. It may be difficult, it's going to require some hard work, but literally whatever it is they want to do, they can do it.
The folks at Air Corps turned the airplane in 9 months. We took it to Benton Harbor, and the folks at Flying Colors put just an absolutely spectacular paint job on the airplane in 60 days, on time, with no issues.
The P-51C takes to the skies. Today, though, there is a special significance. A mere 35 miles away lies the original Tuskegee airfield, and Doug doesn't miss the opportunity to fly over the very spot where the Tuskegee story began. Today, too, there is one more thrill for the crowds below. An F-16 from the 187th Fighter Wing joins Doug in the skies above Columbus to salute the P-51's return to the air.
To be able to join up with the present-day legacy in the Alabama National Guard F-16, Red Tail F-16s has been, just an incredible treat. The poor F-16's flying right at the bottom end of its envelope, and the turbulence was just really intense. And you could see the electronically controlled control surfaces on the F-16 were just all over the place. It was really exciting to watch, but you're sitting there next to an F-16, and all these control surfaces are going up and down and round, and the airplane's not going anywhere. It's always a thrill to get to fly with modern military aircraft, and you just got to call it a highlight of your airshow career when you get to fly with modern military. And so to be here and then be able to go fly over Tuskegee and think about what was going on, in 1942, 43, 44, when 1,000 young black kids from all across the country came to pursue their dream to fly and fight for a country that didn't want their service. That's pretty heavy stuff. And to show people, these air show audiences here at Columbus and at Maxwell Air Force Base, the past and the present and the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen has just been incredibly rewarding.